Hello and welcome to the Sunday Pub. Sorry, I missed out a Sunday Pub last weekend. Hello, Heidi.
How you feeling today, Matt? You said you
I'm
weren't feeling too
feeling
good
good.
last week.
Yeah, it was last week. I will be honest, was mostly a mood thing. I've talked pretty honestly on my channel about my mood problems, and last weekend I wasn't feeling so good in that department. I wasn't physically sick. I just was having a hard time motivating myself to do this. But hey, John, good to see you.
Long days and pleasant
Yeah,
nights, as they say.
good to be back. Yeah, and I thought we would do sprints this time. I mean, chatting obviously, but hello, Jerome. Hello, Orsa.
Oh, I got Kagan the Damned
Everybody's
here.
Okay, don't know it.
Which there's a lot of I'll admit I'm a little uncomfortable with a lot of the rape, but aside from that, it's a pretty good read.
I would be very uncomfortable with any rape.
Well, I'll just put it this way. I don't like reading about rape. In this book, it's not enough to turn me away from it, but it's quite there's a lot of it.
Okay. Hi, Whitney. Good to see you. Whitney's here, I think, for the first time. We just started chatting the other day on Discord. Whitney, if you don't know Whitney has an awesome, mostly science fiction booktube channel.
Yeah, I'm trying to get her on my podcast.
Joanna was raving about her Octavia Butler video with good reason, because it's a really, really good video. I actually, Whitney, you will probably be pleased to know I bought, based on your video, I immediately ordered Bloodchild. Octavia Butler is one of those authors that's like been on my list of these are people you should have read for probably 30 years. And I've just never read anything by her. So I'm going to read Bloodchild this year.
Yeah, I'm going to read Kindred next month, actually, for Black History Month.
Cool.
Because,
Kat can't stay. She's also getting up early with Jerome. Are you two sleeping together, or what's up with that? No, I'm pretty sure you're not. Heidi doesn't want sprints, but I don't only do what Heidi says. Shad.
Yeah, Heidi was asking me about Fourth Wing because my audience voted for me to read Fourth Wing, so that should be fun.
Why? Why do you do these things to yourself?
I don't know.
It's meant to be garbage. Like everything I've heard,
they voted for it.
Everything I've heard, I wouldn't even be this much tempted to read Fourth Wing. There are so many books that I am absolutely certain, without even reading it, I am absolutely certain there are so many books that are so much better that I would not waste my time. K2, good to see you.
Thank you, Whitney.
John says, don't read Sarah Douglas.
Well, it's complicated. It's not that I'm like, how do I put this? Like, I don't like reading about rape, but it's not something that scares me away from reading, unless it's just like lazily done. Like,
I think it needs to be handled, of course, in the right way, if there is even a possible right way to handle it, and it needs to have a purpose, which isn't cheap. There is, for example, in Malazan Book of the Fallen, there are some really horrible things that are done to women, and they are very much, they're traumatic, they're hard to read, but I think at least that they are very clearly done with a purpose. A purpose to make you think, and a purpose in the story. Jerome, yeah, I also want to read Dawn or Lilith's Brood, but I am taking Whitney's advice and starting with Bloodchild, especially because it's small. It seems like a good taste test. So we'll see. Hi, Bex. Good to see you again. Yeah. I again, Whitney's advice. She said that Octavia Butler's written many things that are better than Kindred.
Well, tell her with respect. Too bad I'm reading Kindred first.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone cares when you read Kindred or not. I don't think Whitney's going to be personally insulted by that. But yeah, I decided to try Bloodchild first and then see what happens. So Heidi, now you want me to trash Wheel of Time?
Actually,
Really?
I'm doing this new series on my channel called What's the Big Fuss, where I just get a bunch of popular books. Fourth Wing one. I'm surprised because I had Eye of the World on there. I thought Wheel of Time would win by a landslide, and it didn't. So there you go.
That is a good question, Bex. Are you not doing well today, Heidi? Do we need to be nice to you? I'm happy to be nice to you if you specifically request that we be nice to you. I will be nicer than I usually am. Raph, good to see you, man. I hope you have recovered from poking yourself in the face reading all of the Dritz books. I think that would be a cause for a good long therapy session. I haven't read any of them. I don't know what I'm talking about, obviously. But from what you've been talking about, Raph, I think maybe there was a little bit of self-hate going on there.
Well, I'm surprised that he wasn't driven mad by the revelation, like if he read the Necronomicon. But I also haven't read Drizzt, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would actually enjoy some of the Drizzt books. But I don't think I would enjoy reading all of them back to back like Raph did. That's a little crazy.
Well, I told you this last night, Matt, but China Mieville is back, and him and Keanu are teaming up. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay, that is unexpected.
Derry,
hello, hey Britton, how you going?
Hi, Derry, how are you? I'm doing well.
Well, it's Monday morning, and I forgot the landlord had the painters in. So if you hear some scraping noises, it's the painters scraping the old paint off the house. Hey,
yay!
My cat is not happy.
Party now.
Exactly. Two of my favorite women on BookTube have joined us.
Yay!
Welcome.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, good to see you both.
The cat is
like
not happy.
Auntie of YouTube.
Aww.
She's like, sit down, everyone. We're gonna read a book today.
Well, yeah.
Derry is definitely in my top 5 nicest booktubers list, without question.
Well, I've all got you fooled, haven't I? Secretly, I could have plans.
I bet she's gonna be like, I dropped the squid like 5 minutes ago on New York.
Oh, totally.
Like, what the fuck?
So Raph, like, nobody forced him to. He decided to do this to himself.
Yes, he's a bit of a masochist in that sense.
He hates himself. He read all the Dritz books like back to back over the holiday season.
Painful.
And now he's saying it's an atrocity, and no one should ever read it.
Yes, I've been following with interest his increasing annoyance, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
With the Dritz books. So yeah, you know that you're a grown up, Raph, and you can stop.
Yeah, well, and I told him, like, self-harming is really not recommended, and like maybe you should seek help. Like, do you need a hug? Do you need a long talk?
Yeah, you definitely need to be talking.
Perhaps like the cantankerous uncle who lives in the basement.
Yeah.
No, I think he just needs to find himself a friendly sadist who will do this for him instead of doing it to him himself, because it's not healthy. So, no. And I realized I just used the words friendly and sadist in the same sentence. Which
you could be friendly and a sadist, probably. Probably. I don't actually know any friendly sadists, but it could be a combination. Jerome, I think there are booktubers who are not nice, actually. I mean, I don't hang out with any, but I'm pretty sure that there are some. And you could be one of those. I mean, actually, like, dissing shit and being grumpy and raging against things and rants and stuff, that sells really well on BookTube.
It does. And I know other corners genres of booktube can be very clicky, and there is some nastiness. So not all of booktube is as awesome as our corner.
Exactly. So if you want to be an asshole booktuber, don't let anyone stop you, Jerome.
Exactly. And Raph, yes, you are
live
very
your dreams.
nice. You're lovely.
Yeah, Raph is generally nice. He's
angry, but
he's angry,
nice.
But he's nice. That's true. Yeah, exactly.
Terry Pratchett was angry and also awesome. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah, exactly.
Angry is fine.
Yeah.
Jerome would be like, I'd
talk about weird fiction, look down on everything else. Yeah, well, that actually sounds like it would probably
Jerome,
be pretty successful on YouTube. Honestly,
but Jerome, have you heard? Have you heard the news?
Yeah. Speaking of weird fiction,
I don't know.
China Miéville and Keanu Reeves, or they're not writing a book together. After I actually looked at the article, it
did you say like Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, and China Miéville they have a deal, and Keanu Reeves put out a comic called Berserker.
Yes.
Right, and he's given China Miéville the rights to write a novel of Berserker, or at least based on it. I don't know how close.
Okay,
I'm glad John got my reference.
100% right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, John, I will say Keanu has good taste. If he hope it doesn't suck.
I had a brief look at his comic, and I said, nope, not for me. Not going to read that. I don't see any point in reading that.
Jimmy started his manga journey with Berserk.
Yeah, but no, this is not Berserk. It's Berserker.
Berserker. Okay.
Right? Berserk is a manga, like a
basically
proper
about
Japanese
Keanu
manga.
Reeves,
but Berserker is by Keanu Reeves. Right?
Oh, okay.
And it's a Western comic. It's not a manga.
Okay. That somehow makes it even weirder.
Yeah, kind of, doesn't it? Yeah.
That's very straight. Okay. Yeah, I see how we got here.
I don't know if we're going to read that, Jerome. I mean, I like China Miéville for sure. But
I'm always harassing people to read the Bad Lag books, so you know.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
my party.
I definitely recommend Pretty Street Station, and if you're into it, then continue. But I don't know if I want to read a book written by Miéville based on a comic written by Keanu.
Keanu Reeves.
I'm not
such a
sure.
strange sentence.
Yeah. It was really weird when it came up in the news. I think I saw it on Twitter. It was like a picture of the two of them. It wasn't a picture of the two of them together. It was two pictures next to each other. And I was like, what do they have to do with each other?
Yeah.
But
I know, it's so weird. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So George isn't staying with us today, Evie.
Yeah, she's got her own things planned, and
yeah.
Fair enough.
Fitz is. I'm not disturbing her. Fitz is sleeping right next to me, but I'll let her sleep for a bit.
Yeah, or China Miéville writing like a Star Wars novel. That would be something.
I think that would be far too mainstream capitalist
surreal.
For China.
Yeah.
Totally, Daniel. Some people's channels are all about stuff they hate, and I don't get it. I mean, when I was thinking about setting up my channel, that was one of the first things that occurred to me. It was like, I don't want to talk about anything I don't like.
What is the point of that?
Yeah.
It just gives me anxiety, like crapping on things.
Yeah.
Genuinely talking about things I don't like, because just puts me in a bad mood. And
just maybe it's because I'm a Buddhist, but I was thinking like,
what? So like positive energy and all that?
No, that's hippie bullshit. But like proper Buddhism, like your experience of the world, of everything in the world, no matter what happens, is a result of the state of your mind. Right? So things that we think are horrible can happen to you. And if your mind is in the right state, you can not suffer that much. And if your mind's in a horrible state, you can have a small setback and you suffer a lot. Right?
Oh, yes.
So
Doesn't take much.
Spending time like recording and editing and all of that, creating videos about something I hate puts my mind in a state where I will not enjoy life as much. Like guaranteed. It's just kind of logical. So why would I do that?
I was gonna say that doesn't sound like very like particularly Buddhist. That just sounds psychological. Like
sure.
It is a known fact that if you surround yourself around negative things, you are going to become more negative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hi, Thornall.
Thornall is in the chat. He's always looking for comic book recommendations. So yeah, it's always fun.
Hi, Thornall. Yeah, so those hate channels, I bump into them once. I listen to like maybe a minute. I realize what they're doing, and I do not subscribe or ever look at them again.
Yeah, I got sick of guys like Critical Drinker because
Critical Drinker is just an asshole. I mean, like, sorry, but like I've never heard anything about him where I thought I would want to have a beer with him, and that's kind of my judge of an okay person.
There's an element of laziness to it because it doesn't matter how good something is. You can always find something to go, that's not that great. But to find something good, it's harder. And to try and explain the good is actually effort.
Yeah.
And so it's just laziness to my mind. And I don't like it. And I get to feel superior to them and go, I'm better than you.
Whitney is telling me or telling us that Greg Bear wrote a Halo novel. I guess Greg Bear was a bit short on cash. That's surprising to me.
Well, you don't like Halo?
It doesn't have anything to do with whether I like Halo or not, but like Greg Bear, who is an actual science fiction author who writes his own things, writing in a video game universe licensed
could
novel.
Be a fan.
He could just be a huge fan. And
I was going to say also like Adrian Tchaikovsky does Warhammer 40K, and
does he?
To be fair, there's not a genre that man can't write in.
True. Oh man, 40K. I'm kind of.
Do you guys know Gareth Hanrahan?
Familiar.
Right at the beginning of my channel, I reviewed a trilogy that he wrote. But he is a writer or has been a writer for role-playing games for over 20 years. And I know him from role-playing games. I've like played things that he wrote.
Right.
And then I saw that he wrote a novel and I was like, oh, cool. Guy wrote a novel. I'll have to read that. And luckily it's actually good. And I interviewed him and he's a really nice guy with a very thick accent, Irish accent, which is sometimes difficult to understand.
You just got to make them slow down.
Yeah. Okay. Tchaikovsky's been playing 40K for years. Okay.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
So you guys might have already mentioned this since I was late, but what are you guys reading?
You can see the background, can you not? You know what I'm reading anyway. Game of Thrones. Okay, cool.
I've been in the most horrendous slump of my life.
Oh.
And I've put quite a bit of thought into it because it's not right for me to not be reading. It's just not right. Even my therapist is concerned. And I've decided that I've tried to read too much new stuff, basically. And my brain has gone, can we just stop? That's too hard.
Yeah.
So I've spent the last 4 weeks only rereading. And I actually feel more myself. So I'm like, okay, I'll reread some more and I'll put off the new things that I wanted to do. So instead of going into the next in the Bear and the Nightingale series, which I fully intended to do this month, Evie, I'm going to reread Bear and the Nightingale. So
isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how so many people have so many books that they feel like they have to apologize to Evie about?
Yeah,
but only because she gets them right, and so you feel like an idiot when you leave it, and then when you finally read it, you're like, "Oh my god, Evie was so right." So of course we apologize because we're like, "Okay, I know I'm going to love it when I get there. I haven't got there yet." So.
When I started rereading this, I mean, the first person I thought to tell was Evie. You know, I'm rereading Spear, so good.
My favorite thing is completely, seemingly unconnected channels who are reading Evie books.
Yeah.
And comments
Oh, yeah.
always are like, "Oh, Evie's going to be delighted because somebody's reading A Spear Cuts Through Water, or somebody's reading Stephen Graham Jones, or somebody's."
Evie is booktube
awesome.
Santa. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just think it's lovely that everybody knows what Evie loves, because I think it's lovely when people go, "Oh, you're the Hob Girl. I love it."
Everybody knows what Evie
been.
loves because Evie sends what she loves to everybody.
Well,
I force it upon everyone. It's true.
Exactly.
Anyways, Britton, what are you reading?
Oh, I'm reading Kagan the Damned right now, which is kind of throwback to Sword and Sorcery of like Robert E. Howard, Michael Moorcock, who's actually blurbed right here.
Is it episodic in that way as well, or?
Little bit, but it is more of a story, and I do have some. It's kind of I mean I have some issues with it so far, but I'm having fun with it. So
Nice.
there you go.
Speaking of Raph,
Yay!
Oh no, it's BookTube's crazy uncle.
herzlich
do it.
willkommen.
Oh yes, it's so satisfying when you open the beer like that.
Oh, you're muted.
You're
Darren.
muted, or your mic isn't working, Raph. Yeah, we can't hear you. I don't know whether it's your.
Well, I'm very jealous that you're drinking, but it's too
Physical
early.
mic?
It's only 9 a.m. here. I can't have a drink with you.
Cheers, Raph. I've got red wine, a nice German red wine.
You know, I want to see another video
it's
where
late.
we see Raph's glorious pecs while he's making mead and talking about Vikings.
I think I missed that one.
I think I missed that one.
We still can't hear you, Raph. Nope.
Technical difficulties.
I don't know what it is. You're not muted on my end, so I don't know if it's actually a technical mute or if it's just like your microphone isn't plugged in or what it is.
And yes, Daniel, Raph has arrived to air his discontent in person.
Yeah, Thornall said he's reading the last published Dritz book and he's read them all. So he hates himself as well. So
Clearly, the
Raph says
masochism is strong.
Raph says in the chat he's working on it.
Nice.
Yeah. See, Jimenez, Evie and I have got beef with Jimenez, or at least with Jimenez's publisher, because we've been trying to get in touch with him, like, especially for this read along. I was like, hey, let's do an interview with Jimenez because so many authors are accessible to booktubers and Jimenez isn't online anywhere.
Which, I mean, to be fair, good for him.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know?
totally.
Hell yeah.
No shade for avoiding the internet. That's absolutely understandable. But we've written his publicist or his handler at the publisher and haven't been able to get there. I haven't gotten any replies or anything like that. So I don't know. So yeah, I don't even know if Jimenez is aware of Evie like basically selling out his book for him.
Yeah, she's like shilling it everywhere. I mean, you
Shilling
you should have seen her on Carlos and Yolanda's stream last night. She was going at it.
I don't even mean she's shilling it. I mean it's sold out because she bought all the
genuinely.
copies.
Genuinely.
Like she
all the
sent it
hardcovers,
to like
I bought at least a dozen for different people a dozen different people.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I talk to someone, I'm like, "Oh man, have you read The Spirit?" And they're like, "Yeah, Evie sent it to me." Like everybody.
Yeah.
So
I keep seeing booktubers with it, and my first thought is to go, "Oh, Evie got you a copy as well." And then I think, "Oh, I mustn't say that because maybe you're the one person that Evie didn't send it to."
It should say here like Simon Jimenez,
provided,
and then down here it should say Evie's book.
Yeah.
Oh. So I will say that I'm so sorry, Shad. Well, I know you do audiobooks, so give me your address, Shad, and I'll send you the audiobook.
Bless you.
But seriously, I will.
She really will.
But my husband
she sent my fucking cat toys.
It's true.
Like
she's a ninja gift giver.
Yeah.
There's
absolutely.
no escaping.
So I can't remember what stream it was or what video, but someone mentioned me sending Spear Cuts Through Water, and my husband was watching it with me as he tends to watch the majority of booktube videos that I watch as well. And he's like, you sent them the book too? Oh my God.
We don't have endless money, woman.
Listen, I am the breadwinner, goddammit. So
Oh, fair enough. You spend it how you like.
So what does your
Alright.
husband do?
he's a dental assistant. So
A male?
he makes good money. I just
Right.
make infinitely.
Oh,
More.
My cousin is
what do you
studying to be
do,
a
Edie?
hygienist.
What
I
do you
actually ran
actually
into
do?
her at the dentist the other day when I was over there.
He's a dental assistant, not a hygienist.
Oh.
Hygienists make a shit ton of money. So unfortunately he does not. I mean he makes money.
good.
But no, so what I am actually a risk analyst.
Okay.
So I don't know if I should put this out on the internet because it's not official yet, but ask her it. My manager is working on getting me promoted to basically a manager level. So basically I'm a manager, like I get manager money. So
All right. Nice.
Basically, it's somebody at least acknowledges Evie's awesomeness in the form of monetary value.
it's true.
Yeah, and
Excellent.
if you're a risk analyst, you're clearly beyond me already knowing this. You're clearly extremely intelligent.
Oh, yeah.
It's debatable because I really just stumbled into this job. I have no formal background at all.
See,
I'm
you're
gonna push
talking
back on that.
you're
I
talking
got
about
my
two
job
different
because of
things.
My mum, and I'm like, yeah, my mum got me my job, but I kept it.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
you
I
can
mean,
fall
like,
into a job. Excelling at it is a whole different thing.
exactly. You can be lucky. That's one thing, but being able to actually do the job, I'm pretty
And
sure
well,
risk analyst
clearly.
requires some intelligence, and you're about to probably get promoted, which you don't generally get unless you're like sucking up to someone very effectively,
I
or
can't see
you're
you.
good. Like, so I wouldn't diss yourself just because you fell into the job.
Listen, y'all already know I'm Book Santa, Simon Jimenez, Winter Night Trilogy, Robin Hobb, Stephen Graham Jones. Okay, those are things. And also, if you know me, you should know self-deprecation. Okay,
Oh, yes.
this is
I
what
was
I do.
literally- Before you were, I was about to say, okay, we have to stop now because compliments make Evie really uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
we have to just start insulting her, basically,
Yeah.
just to make
I
her feel
have to
better.
offset the kindness that you guys kind of mirror back to me with self-deprecation because it makes me really uncomfortable. So,
I'm
So that's cool.
kind of okay with making you uncomfortable with compliments. In general, I wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable, but with compliments, I think it's actually good conditioning. I think you need
I
it.
like it because Evie's
It's
even
therapeutic.
more sensitive to it than me.
sorry,
So-
I'm just gonna start gagging every time someone compliments me, and I'm gonna make them stop because apparently people are get really freaked out when I do the gagging, the fake gagging.
Your hair looks great today, Evie. And I love that
I
top.
know.
Oh my god.
You've spent too many
Anyways,
years around
you-
cats,
you-
Evie.
you
That
do
was
the-
quite
you do the-
convincing.
You do the fake gagging very convincingly.
Look,
Yeah, because you get the body going, which is the thing.
if you have seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, please, anyone that has seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia knows the reference. Sweet D's gagging, aka
Oh,
Caitlin
yeah.
Olsen, is hysterical. Like that is what
did
I
not know
aim
that.
to be able to do.
I always think of when Charlie's on stage and he's just like, "Oh, hey guys."
Oh, that was D. But
Oh, that was
also
D?
like that in that same episode, he does like Sweet D's stand up and he's like, now I get it. So
Okay.
One old geeks comment. This is actually a thing of mine. If you've seen my channel, you know that I think about covers a lot. And the thing they used to do back when I was young is they actually put stickers on books when they wanted to put a sticker on a book, and you could take it off or leave it as you wished.
Yeah.
But
You had
now
the
they
choice.
print it on the cover and ruin the design, which makes me angry. Raph, say something.
Can you hear me now?
Yay!
Hooray!
Cheers.
Seriously,
I
are we
have.
gonna-
Well, cheers, everybody. I have figured out the problem.
Are we gonna see another video with your just glorious pecs making mead?
Possibly. My current batch of mead is running low because yesterday I was at a bachelor's party of a friend who's getting married, which involved, because we're all huge nerds, and it's basically our entire Dungeons and Dragons gaming group, and my offline book club was involved in this. We just went. We spent the entire day drinking mead and wandering around in the snow.
Oh, it's snowing out here today. So, yeah.
Sounds all right.
Yeah, as these things go, it was pretty fun. But it means that I'm slowly running out of mead and need to make new mead. And depending on the weather, I would totally do that again. But it depends on the weather.
Oh, okay.
Chad says he rarely looks at covers. Chad, I don't know if you know me, but I was a photographer. I am a designer. I've been working in visual media since I was a teenager. I am very into covers. I try not to judge books by their covers, but I have a hard time thinking of any book I've read that was amazing and had a garbage cover, except sci-fi masterworks, because they all have garbage covers and they're reprinting old, really good science fiction, but all of the covers are garbage because they're producing them very cheaply.
Yeah, but I think like visual design, graphic design is one of those things that now that we have computers, everyone thinks they can do it, but actual professionals know a lot of stuff that, every average Canva user doesn't know.
Actual professionals know that they can't actually do it. Those people who think
that's right.
It's one of those things. Like web design is another one because they're obviously kind of connected and linked. Everyone thinks they can do it, but they can't.
Yeah, I had a long conversation with a lot of people, only a couple of whom were angry and rude, on Twitter about subjective and objective reactions to covers. And it sounds really arrogant to say, so it pisses some people off, but most people are not at all qualified to objectively analyze a design. Like
it's utterly
just like
subjective. I like it. I don't.
I can't objectively analyze rocket ship design, but I can objectively analyze a cover design.
Yeah.
Because I know colors, I know form, I know typography, I know composition, I know all of those things for years. And a lot of people, I say, this is a really badly done cover. And they're like, but I love it. You're an idiot. I'm like, no.
You're allowed to love it. It's just not good.
You're totally allowed to love it. Yeah. I don't love it because it's not good, but you're totally allowed to love it because you don't know it's not good. Yeah. That's fine, But yeah.
That's something I've learned since joining BookTube is the difference between objectively good and subjectively good. And to the point where I went back and read a book that I previously thought was wonderful and hadn't read for some time. I read it again because rereading's what I do. And as I'm reading the book, thought, this is actually really bad. And I like the idea of the story more than I actually like the story. But it took learning the difference to see it. And
I mean,
that's a huge step.
I was recently talking with AP about this, actually. I try not to call myself a reviewer.
Yeah. Because
there are people who are trained and very qualified to review books, and they know a lot of shit that I don't. And what I try and say is, I thought this book was awesome because blah, 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 but I'm not really very qualified to analyze the prose or exactly the things that the author is doing, because I'm not a writer, I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a critical analyst of literature. I just don't have those skills. So I just talk about what I like.
I may have asked this before, but Highway Cavalier in chat, is that a pagan altar reference in your nickname there? And if so, hell yeah.
Just Highway Cavalier. Oh yeah,
I love an in-joke.
Just joined or just commented for the first time.
I don't know, but it's a good comment. Nobody does like to be reminded that they might have bad taste.
Yeah, exactly.
I do have bad taste, and I think that's fine. But I do also know when something is good.
Raph,
I think.
I thought Raph would start raging for a minute, but it's okay.
No, I mean,
and especially I openly admit to loving Twilight, and I know as an adult that those are not good books. I know this. I can read them and go, oh dear.
Wait, I thought you
But
were
that
already an
doesn't
adult
take
when they
away
came
my
out.
enjoyment. Sorry?
I thought you already were an adult by the time they came out. I was 7 when
Yeah.
they were coming out.
But I needed to know what the hype was because I the FOMO, seriously. And my daughter-in-law was a huge fan, and she and I get on amazingly well. And she was like, oh my God, you've got to read these. They're so great. And I read them and I was like, these are terrible. I love them. And yeah, so sometimes you just got to let yourself love the rubbish.
Which is awesome. I mean, as long as you're aware that it's rubbish, like I will
totally
never
rubbish.
diss anyone for enjoying anything, you know.
Yeah.
But just because you enjoy it doesn't mean it's objectively good. You know?
No.
Yeah, it's like reading Frank Miller's Batman, All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder.
Ooh.
Awful comic, but man, I love it. I
But
love
it's
it
beautiful,
despite
Chris
myself.
Miller. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, even with all the stuff I said recently about the Drizzt books, right? I did have fun with, and I still maintain that the original, like the first 2 books he wrote, the first one, Crystal Shard and Streams of Silver, they can be fun because they do something very specific very well. It becomes problematic after that when all the, the underlying issues that are sort of baked into Dungeons and Dragons and partly into Forgotten Realms kind of come to the forefront, and then things get ugly. But the Crystal Shard, if you want to explain to someone how an old school Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game would work, make them read Crystal Shard, and it's probably one of the best representations of all the good and bad things in that kind of game.
I love how Evie, she wrote us in the private chat that she needed to go to eat something and she'll come back. And is that George?
Leave the camera on.
Yeah, her
Yeah,
cat's like, fuck
she
this,
left the
I'm
camera
taking
on, and her
over.
cat was just like, "Oh, my seat." So we're now looking. You can't see it, Raph, but we're now looking at
George
Evie's
the
cat. George the cat is sleeping in Evie's chair.
Yeah,
Right
my
now
cat,
on
she'll
camera.
just bust in my room. Like, she doesn't give a fuck. She just.
I was hoping to introduce the world to Motzi the floof, but as I said when I arrived, we have painters scraping old paint off the house and gone. Motzi was out of here like a shot, and so I don't know where he is. But the plan was that you would meet the floof. So it has to be another day.
It's who I also call Floofy Guts. Floofy Guts is actually coming over onto my desk right now. Come here, Fitz.
So my name.
See what that happened to my sister and my brother-in-law. Their cat is a very demonic cat. It's a very a cat that is good at giving.
Better than others.
It's a completely white cat that is very good at giving demonic stares. And my brother-in-law was at a conference, like an online conference, because it was during the plague and whatnot. And he went to the bathroom real quick, and the cat just sat in front of the laptop and just gave the webcam that evil stare.
Oh, that's glorious. I hope somebody screenshot it. Oh, fabulous.
Oh yeah, they screenshotted it. They made it like the official like profile picture for the live stream.
I love it. I love that so much.
Somebody on Twitter recently called Fitz a feline incarnation of Sauron. So she also has this particular look occasionally.
Fierce.
That was not on Twitter though. That was on Alan's Discord. I read it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
And it's I think it was Thornall who's in the chat here.
Yes, Thornall is in the chat. But yes,
I'm so
Fitz
bad
is
at keeping up with Discord.
Yeah.
There are many Discords.
It is apparently a pagan altar reference, Raph.
Yeah, I saw that. Pagan altar, for those who don't know, is or was a British new wave of British heavy metal band with a lot of like folky influences in their stuff. Their singer unfortunately passed a couple of years ago. It's one of those weird underground bands. They had like 3 albums that only were actually released later on. It's a complicated underground kind of thing. It was interesting because it was a father and son band. So they started that band in the 70s, the dad with his son. And now the son is like in his 60s. The dad is,
That's cool.
And they have a very unique sound that's sort of like very, very mystical British rock music, I would call it.
I feel like it would speak to me. I'm going to have to look it up.
They do have at least one song about Lord of the Rings, among other things.
Because the British folk thing I'm not usually a fan of, but there was an album by Steel Eye Span that they did
Oh, I
with Terry
love-
Pratchett with Wintersmith, which I adore. That whole album is just gorgeous. So
I recently went down the Michael Moorcock heavy metal rabbit hole for an
Well, he's more
afternoon.
like a psychedelic guy with his stuff with Hawkwind, right? Like he used to perform with Hawkwind.
Yeah, and he
I
wrote a
heard
lot of
the
songs
Legend
for
of the
them.
Black Sword, I think is what it's called, album that
Yeah.
Hawkwind did. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. I don't know if it's one of their best, but I enjoyed myself.
I like it. It's a cool one. Hawkwind recently did an entire album as a concept album on The Machine Stops, the classic sci-fi short story, for example.
There's
there you go.
there's a blog page that I found. Some guy, it's a blog about heavy metal music,
Yeah.
but he did one entry, which is very long, about Michael Moorcock and his influence on metal music. And it's
It's
just
been around
like
forever.
band after band after band who, like, there's a couple of bands, everything they've done ever is based on a Moorcock book. And then there's other
Domine
bands
from Italy. I've even actually organized a concert with them. They have done like several albums just about it, but they've branched out into also some Conan stuff at some point.
Okay, yeah, you got to keep it
Oh, I
fresh.
just saw that Alan Moore
Can I
and
just say,
Susanna
how
Clark are
awesome
having
is
a
it
conversation.
that this science fiction fantasy community is the one that's hooked into heavy metal?
Yeah.
You know, the geekiest, quiet people in the corner.
A lot of
More of
metal
a
fans have
prog
a
band.
lot of heavy metal people have always been
Yeah.
nerds, musicians, and
love
everyone
it.
else.
Yeah.
You know,
It's glorious.
but like the craziest one is in fact Sirith Ungol, which is a old school heavy metal band. They're giving their last concerts this year. I'm definitely going to see a couple of them. The band is called Sirith Ungol, so you know what it supposedly be
Huge Lord of the
about,
Rings.
right?
That's the thing I find really hilarious about Sirith Ungol. They're named out of Lord of the Rings, and yet every single album cover that they've ever published is a Michael Whelan Elric painting.
I know.
Every single album. All they do is they buy
That
Michael
becomes
Whelan
an
Elric
in-joke
paintings.
in
that
the
has to be a
community.
joke. That has to be an in joke.
It
No,
has
no,
to.
Because really, they're
Because
just
most of their
nerds.
songs are not about Lord of the Rings. A lot of their songs are about Eternal Champion, Elric, Michael Moorcock.
I
The
love
last
it.
one, not the last one, the one before that actually had a really interesting Fafford and Grey Mouser based song, The
Okay.
Frostmont's
Really?
Dream, which is even one of the more obscure Fafford and Grey Mouser stories.
So it's
That
really
you know.
just a big flex on the world.
There's a lot of
going,
nerds
this
in
is
the
how
world.
big a geek we are.
They're just big sword and sorcery geeks. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm,
I mean that's like the other part that it started. I think it actually started a lot because of the art. When you look at Frank Frazetta, who obviously painted a lot of soft cover, paperback covers back in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of album covers, like explicit ones for albums by bands like, oh God, what's the name? I'm blanking on the name right now. But
And
a band
a lot of art that ended up airbrushed on the side of vans in the 70s.
was Frank Frazetta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point. So with Frazetta and Michael Whelan, you have two fantasy authors that ended up on a lot of album covers because their stuff looks
It
really,
seems-
really cool.
Yeah.
Not to put a finer point on it. And I think
Yeah.
through that, a lot of people that grew up to be musicians in the 80s read paperback fantasy novels in the 60s and 70s. And
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that became very obvious to me. I was just never aware of it before. I'd heard about, like, Blue Oyster Cult has a couple of Michael Moorcock inspired songs, and there are a couple of bands. But then I was like, oh my God, this is really a rabbit hole. And it was just this huge blog post with like 20 or 30 bands, all of whom have at least songs based on Moorcock or their name. Like there's a band called Stormbringer. All of this stuff all just came directly from Michael Moorcock. And then Hawkwind, I knew about Hawkwind and him performing with them and writing a lot of their songs and that kind of stuff already. But yeah, tons more.
I just love the connection between two communities that you really, unless you're in either of those communities, it's difficult to imagine being connected.
It doesn't seem intuitive to me. Yeah,
No.
you wouldn't. It
I
just
love
didn't
it.
seem like it makes sense to me. But yeah,
it did shock the teenager, because I live with my best friend and her children, and her teenage girl. She's 15. She's discovering the coolness of bands, but of course she wants to be cool. So she's finding old bands. So she keeps coming up with things like, "Oh my God, have you heard about this band?" And me and her mum are like, "Yeah, we went to their concert," you know. And she was utterly astonished to find out that I'd been to see Metallica twice.
This band is brilliant.
She was like, "You went to Metallica?"
You
like,
went to Metallica? Yeah.
You know, it blew her mind.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine when you're young that old people were also.
Yeah, it really was. And she was like, "I would never have thought you liked that." I'm like, honey, there are sides to me that you have to be a grown-up to learn about. Okay. And yeah, but it blew her mind.
Manila Road. I've never heard of Manila Road. Is apparently a Robert E. Howard and Lovecraft inspired band.
This is one song from this really heavy metal band. It's like something to. I'll have to look it up. I can't think.
I love the fact that Evie has returned.
It's Elric inspired.
Has let George keep the seat.
Evie is still muted. She's just watching us and stroking her cat.
Yeah, that's lovely.
I finally remember the band that I was actually talking about. It's Dust. The band was called Dust. They have two albums.
Yes.
One is Heart Attack and one is Dust. And their drummer, they're sort of progressive acid rock kind of stuff from the 70s. And their drummer then went on to become the drummer for the Ramones, which makes no sense because he used up all the actual complicated rhythms in these two albums, and then all he could do was like 4/4 for the rest of his career.
which is all you need if you're the drummer for the Ramones.
Yeah, no, he's the founding drummer of the Ramones. So back in the 70s.
Okay.
Well, there you go. He was like, "Look, all I've got left is the 4/4. So this is just what we're doing."
Exactly. Which
he like so became a really famous producer and did like some very like pop albums that you would not suspect being produced by that guy.
Yeah. Oh, that's
a band that I've seen.
Say,
I saw the
my
Ramones
contribution
twice.
to the metal / fantasy conversation is that the band Within Temptation has a song called Hand of the King that is directly inspired by specifically the Farseer trilogy.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Okay. I've never heard of music inspired by Farseer. Okay. Or
there is.
There's some beautiful
I'm sure it
songs.
exists. I've just never heard of it. Yeah.
There's, when it comes to fantasy, there's usually at least one band that has made songs. But like King Killer does have several bands, and it's
which I have learned since finding BookTube.
I have friends in a band, people that I've worked with before and so forth. And they even have a song about Thunder the Barbarian from the 80s, if you remember that one.
Oh my God, that's so good. Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, touching back to the teenager, I have to say I did use you, Raph, as cool points. She was like, what do you know? I'm like, honey, I know a guy who lives in Germany who has a record company and produces a death metal. Okay, you don't know me.
You don't know me, but I know Raph.
That's right.
Here's the funny thing: the band that has the song about Thunder the Barbarian does also have a song about Redwall. Because
really?
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
It's a song called Salamanderstrom, like that novel.
Cute.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally use you for cool points, Raph. Totally.
So now that you have stopped punishing yourself, Raph, what are you listening to at the moment?
I'm really enjoying my time with good books. Again, I did go through a bunch of books that were published in 2023 that I didn't realize were published in 2023 because I'm really bad at looking up what books come out. So I went through The Saint of Bright Doors by a person whose name I'm going to absolutely butcher because they're from Sri Lanka and I have no idea how to pronounce that, but it's Vajra Chandrasekhara, and it's a really good, weird, magical realism craziness thing.
He sold me by comparing it to Spear Cuts Through Water.
I did steal that comparison from the review on Tor.com.
Yeah, well,
because I have not yet read the Spear Cuts.
I was going to say, have you read Spear?
No.
I know what song I was thinking of now. It's Panalorn by
Oh.
Blind Guardian. I like that one.
Well, they have a song called Tanalon, and they have another song called On Our Quest for Tanalon from like an older album.
Also, sorry, Raph, didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was like,
No, it's all good.
Yeah,
I have not read Spearcut Through Water. It has been in my Audible library for a year, I think, and constantly something comes up for me to not start. And I know everyone is currently doing like a buddy read thing, and I'm like, yeah, this sounds really cool, but I'm also really bad at buddy reading stuff. So I'm gonna wait until everyone's done, and then I'm gonna binge read the whole thing in like 2 days.
I was talking with someone about this recently. I mean, you're obviously much more of a pro at audiobooking than I am.
Yeah.
But I just reading it today, I was trying to imagine, because I'm rereading it at the moment.
Yeah.
I was trying to imagine audiobooking it.
Yeah.
And for me, it would be annoying because I'm constantly stopping and going, oh my God, that paragraph was remarkable, and going back and rereading a paragraph or a sentence or, and pausing and thinking about what I just read. And I read a lot slower reading that book than I do with a lot of other things.
Well, I mean, there are certainly books where I struggle with, where I think some things work really well in audio, some don't necessarily. Some you have to take slower, some you can do faster, some you can do stuff at the same time. Like, I usually, do like wash dishes, hang up laundry, stuff like that, because it helps me concentrate when I can do something manual, physical at the same time that doesn't involve thinking. I used to do a lot of knitting while listening to audiobooks because it works really well.
Yes, it does.
I love knowing a guy who has a death metal record label and knits.
See, seriously, the cool
and
points
is
that
an
come
angry
with that
communist.
are outstanding.
So I did finish the Saint of Bright Doors, and it's a really good book. And then I just finished today. I finished In Ascension by Martin McInnes, which is a brilliant book, and Jeroen will tell you all about it. It's absolutely fantastic. It's sci-fi. In Ascension, it's sci-fi, but it was on the long list for the Booker Prize last year.
Ooh.
And it's very, very literary fiction, very little sci-fi.
Often,
It's really good.
Okay.
Wow.
It's a very slow, very tender book that is more about, family relations. There's stuff about dementia and stuff about domestic violence and coming to terms with it. It's a really, really fantastic book. I can't explain how much it did resonate with me because of family situations and whatnot. So it's a brilliant book. And next I'm going to read, but I did also reread I Shall Wear Midnight by Terry Pratchett today, which is obviously it's a fantastic book. And I need to spread this. There's one bit in there that has changed the way I will think. I can think about one very specific name forever. There's a situation where Pratchett writes, and this is Pratchett doing Pratchett things, right? He goes like, Letitia, what a name is Letitia? It's half salad and half sneeze.
I know, right? And I can't hear it ever without thinking that. It's brilliant. I love him so much. I do have to actually ask, Raph, with you having done that or doing that, have you been doing the Stephen Briggs, Nigel Planer versions, or have you started with the new ones?
I have always. I own physical copies of some of the Nigel Planer and Stephen Briggs ones.
Oh, wonderful!
Back in the day when you could buy them from ISIS Audiobooks, and they'll send you like a huge ass box with CDs.
Yeah, I used to have the cassettes of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio show, but that's not what I was going to say. My point was that the new audio versions that they've done, the standard of recording is just beautiful. It's excellent quality, and I gave them what I consider a really solid chance. I bought probably a dozen of them so that I had both copies on audio.
Yeah.
And I love Peter Serafinowicz's death. I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
And I
prefer the Stephen Briggs and Nigel Planer versions.
Isn't that the guy who plays the asshole neighbor in Shaun of the Dead? Or not his neighbor?
Yes, he's the roommate.
He's the roommate,
turns into a zombie in the shower. Yeah.
Yeah.
He does a wonderful death. Just wonderful.
He does. I've only listened to a few of them, but yeah, I find myself. I think so much of this is like about nostalgia and what you grow up with, what you get used to, right? I
think if I didn't
absolutely.
already
I even
love-
made an angry video about why I get so upset that everyone is now loving the Andy Serkis or Lord of the Rings versions. I grew up on the Rob Inglis ones, and I I did come up with an objective reason why I think they are sort of bad. But beyond anything else, they are obviously well done. Andy Serkis is a
I
brilliant
like the
performer.
thumbnail of that video. You as Rambo and your face just smacked on there.
Yeah, it's my good friend
I've
and
never listened
Warhammer
to the
40k
Tolkien versions.
Dark Heresy game master John is doing thumbnails, and usually we come up with really stupid ideas, and then he has to
I
I
figure
love
out.
your
Great.
Terminator one. I think I told you that before, but I love
Yeah.
the one, the Terminator one from the first one.
You do great thumbnails. They're great. But I couldn't listen to the Rob Inglis versions of Lord of the Rings because I was like, there's no passion in these. I felt they were really dry. So when Andy Serkis did a version, I was like, oh, I might see if I can listen to those. And I was like, oh, this is what I wanted. So
I grew up
think
on the
definitely plays a part.
I grew up on the BBC radio play version.
That one is also really good.
It's amazing. Every character is voiced by a different actor.
Ooh.
And so it's like a full cast. And when I was in Catholic boys' school, and I think I was already a Buddhist, I got thrown out of religion class.
Because that's the sentence, of course. Catholic
Right?
boys' school Buddhist thrown out, of course.
Yeah, I wasn't officially already a Buddhist, but I think somewhere I was already a Buddhist. So I was always arguing with the teacher, who was usually a priest, in religion class. And 2 years in a row, I got thrown out of religion class. I got a free passing grade, and they just said, "Don't come back." And they gave me a letter. They gave me like an official letter that I just had a free period every day. So I went to the library and I listened to audio tapes of the Lord of the Rings BBC radio play production. And it was so good. I mean,
Tolkien being a Catholic himself in The Lord of the Rings, very much a Catholic novel. You did get your religion class in a different way then.
Well, you did kind of, really, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Although the difference
but in a much lighter way that actually made sense. Like in Catholic like catechism class, basically. I wasn't even a Catholic. Like my mother sent me to the school because it was a good school academically. But I grew up a Baptist, and I was just like,
oh my Lord.
Wait a sec. Purgatory? Really? Like, I haven't been baptized yet. Like, am I in trouble? And they were like, yeah. And I said, bullshit. And they threw me out of class. So
oh yeah, I remember you telling me that.
I had a free period every day for 2 years. It's great.
That's awesome. Because I've got, again, Pratchett, you can get the radio plays of quite a few of his novels as well, and they're great. And I've been listening recently to the Sandman audio plays that they've done recently.
Which I don't understand.
Marvelous.
Which I totally don't understand. I haven't tried them. I'm sure they're great, but
I think it helps knowing the story already.
Sandman's a comic. Sandman is not a text story. It's a comic.
No, they're able to do quite a lot with mood, with music. Yeah. And it's they've done really well with the voice. Like, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. See, that's I've been wary of those because for me it's a comic and I don't want like an adaptation. I would obviously I can't read the comics, so I'm kind of in this like, for me the only way to get the Sandman story would be to listen to that audiobook or that audio adaptation. They call it a graphic audio, and but it still feels wrong to me. It feels like I'm still not actually getting the actual thing, but I'm getting an adaptation.
Close.
When I heard that there was an audiobook of Sandman, I thought the person who told me that was joking.
Yeah,
I was like,
it took me a while to be convinced. I have to say,
you can't make an audiobook of Sandman. It's a comic.
But the production of it is brilliant, and they've got some big names.
As far as I know, Neil Gaiman has been involved with the adaptation as well.
Oh yes,
so
I'm sure. I mean, like the television.
He has a role in the narration. He voices like the narrator, as it were. He sort of gives you the overview of
Neil Gaiman is a brilliant audiobook narrator in general.
He was super involved in the television production as well, which I think is a lot of the reason it was so good.
So I recommend it, Raph. I'd give it a go.
Yeah, we'll see. So two things. First, Thornall in the chat mentioned a band called Burzum, and I have to mention them. I have to pick them out because they're actually a huge problem. They're obviously Norwegian black metal, and their main guy, Varg Vikernes,
oh god,
is very much a fucking Nazi.
Oh no!
He also
Not
murdered
to- to-
somebody. Hold on.
He
also
did murder. He did
somebody.
murder a bandmate. He's. There's a
I'm
lot
sorry,
of
that
things
was an
going on.
afterthought.
No, so it's
Okay,
long
yeah,
Nazi-
not
and
too
by the
bad,
way,
but
he murdered a
somebody,
bandmate.
Raph,
By the
okay,
way.
like
the Norwegian black metal scene in the early 90s is a very complicated, messy situation. A lot of drugs, a lot of mental health issues, and a lot of crime going on at that time. He did also burn a couple of churches, so there's that.
Oh.
And then when he was thrown into prison, he turned into a really hardcore neo-Nazi with everything that that entails. So it's
Charming
important
fellow.
to not just casually mention Burzum because you might get the wrong idea. Yes, it's there's even an old school picture when he's like 16 in his room and he has the map from the Middle-earth role-playing game up behind him, up tacked to the wall and everything. He's written his own role-playing game at this point as well, and it's also pretty racist. But it's important to not just let that slide.
Game
And
did
I-
he
Yeah, fair
write?
enough.
Just to make it clear, I don't think Thornall meant anything by it, but
No.
I think it's important when that name comes up to
Context is
explain why.
important.
That
Yeah,
context
no,
is very much important.
context is good. Context is definitely
Wow.
good.
The
Also,
other thing is-
another Bombadil hater.
But is it
I really
Bombadil
need.
himself though, or Andy's version of Bombadil?
I really, yeah. Well,
Because,
that's.
you know,
I've got a
half of one-
friend who said she DNF'd Lord of the Rings when she got to Bombadil.
Yeah.
Which I
get it.
have a video on my list about why I love Tom Bombadil and why everyone should love Tom Bombadil. But
I think you have to kind of get the concept of Tom Bombadil to go with it.
Tom
I
Bombadil is
really love
actually
Tom
a
Bombadil.
speed bump. Tom Bombadil is like narratively a horrible idea. Horrible
terrible.
idea. He doesn't add anything to the story. There's no reason for him to be there. It's just
Except that he's also
slowing everything down.
fundamentally part of the world, so kind of
Yeah.
has to be.
He exists
yeah.
to be lore, basically. That's
I
it.
Oh,
think
yes,
there's a
it
structural
belonged in the
reason for him
appendices
being there
or
as well,
something.
though. I think there's a structural reason for him being
Really?
there as well. But I understand he does not fit
He
into
does do
modern
things in story.
into modern storytelling conventions in any form.
No.
I think he's heavily influenced by or inspired by Venomarian, the one of the heroes of the Kalevala, who also
Kalevala,
yeah, he has
exactly.
his power to sing stuff into being and sing stuff out
Yeah.
of being and so forth. So there's a
Which
lot
is,
going on
you know,
there.
Quite a core function
Yeah.
in Lord of the Rings. But also you do get narrative purpose in Bombadil, because we learn about
mean-
where the ring can't connect to some people, and we get that there are aspects
That's the main
that
thing that's really
are
nice
separate.
about Tom Bombadil is it's the only example in the entire book of the ring has nothing to do with this.
Yeah,
The ring can't
it's
touch
outside
this.
of
It's like
its realm.
yeah, that's why to me, like I've always thought of Tom Bombadil as he is nature,
Yes.
right? He is an
And I think
incarnation
if
of
you
nature.
know that going
Yeah.
into it, it's not quite as jarring as
Yeah.
if you're not familiar with that sort of personification happening in stories.
Yeah.
It can be very jolting. So
Yeah.
I get it.
Hello,
I'm a fan of Tom
Vero.
Bombadil. I like him.
Yeah, no, I like. Maybe I should get you to do this video with me, Raph, or something,
Sure.
or we could have a chat about it afterwards. I even bought the charming little small book, which is The Adventures of Tom Bombadil.
That
which
one
has
is
got
so
the
funny. Has right,
poem
this-
in there of him, like
Going to the Shire and going back and having the issue with the boat, right?
yeah, and he
Because they
rocks up to
mention
the
in
he rocks
Lord
up
of
to the
Rings
river
that
and he
he
basically
knows
kidnaps Goldberry and makes her his wife, and like it's
There's
pretty
a
bizarre.
fantastic audiobook version of that, and it's narrated by one of those really important British actors, and I need to double check who it is, but I think it's the guy who played Claudius in the I, Claudius TV adaptation from the 70s.
Charles Dance?
What? No. What's his name?
I do think it's hilarious that a lot of metal fans, or not metal fans, well, metal fans probably, but metal bands really like Tolkien, because I can just imagine the old man just sitting there, just shaking his head, being like, "Oh yes, this is
Oh,
what
he
I
would have been.
what I
He wouldn't have been shaking his head. He would have been horrified.
He'd have been
Absolutely.
appalled.
He would have been absolutely
And-
appalled.
The flip side of it is, of course,
like these
Christopher Lee,
degenerates
who
are the
had his
people
own
who are
metal
reading
band.
my books."
Yeah.
I think there's a reason though. No, I recently read the Hartmut Rosa, a German sociologist, wrote a sociology of heavy metal, and I have a lot of issues with the book, but he talks about something that I think is important here. So heavy metal as a genre has, when you enter that very specific space, mental space or whatever, does not have irony. It does have it takes its topics seriously, and it takes good and evil seriously. It may,
Yes.
and that's something that's why Tolkien does resonate, because people talk about modern fantasy having believable villains. Sauron's not a believable villain. Sauron's is evil. He's evil
Sauron's
incarnate.
a cartoon
that
of
resonates.
evil, yeah.
That
He's
level
an
of
eye.
sincerity, I think, is important there.
He's an eye who's obsessed with control.
See you, Evie.
Bye.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing half an hour of George with us.
Bye. Have a good
Yeah.
talk.
Oh yeah, Led Zeppelin was totally into Tolkien. They've got a number of songs.
Yeah, there's
that
even
mention
lyrics
him.
about Mordor in
Not only, but yeah, it's in multiple songs. There are Tolkien references in
Sorry, no, I
Zeppelin.
don't want to start singing Zeppelin.
It's Derek Jacobi by the way, is the guy who's narrating the Tom Bombadil stuff.
I know him as the Master before he changes into John Sim in Doctor Who.
That could be.
I saw him in the Sandman. I'm like, that guy's familiar. Where is that guy from? He's in the 11th.
See you, Derry.
Oh no, there he's going.
Derry said she may come back, but the paint scraping is now on her wall, which makes it loud and irritating, obviously. So
I was
she
gonna
dropped
say,
out.
in the Sandman
by the way,
adaptation, I was like, that guy looks familiar, and I'm like, oh yeah, he was the Master. That's right.
By the way, the next book that I'm going to read, however, will be Him by Jeff Ryman, which also came out last year. And it's apparently about Jesus being a trans man.
Oh boy, but that's a lot of people off.
But from what I can tell, that is the least important detail about the story. So it's a historical novel about Jesus growing up and becoming Jesus, and being involved in, late Second Temple Judaism's weird power struggles and all of that stuff. So it's way more about, Roman occupation of Palestine and the politics within Judaism at the time. But also, he's a trans man.
Okay.
And
Interesting
I'm
idea.
incredibly excited about that one.
Okay. I'm not surprised that you are.
it just has like all the things I'm interested in. It's about religion, It's about history, and it's going very weird new ways. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Sounds definitely interesting.
Yeah.
Have you read Philip Pullman's Good Man Jesus and the Scoundrel Christ?
I have not. I know it exists, but I have not. I am going to read the Book of Mormon though very soon.
Like the actual one, or the?
I used to get in fights. I used to get in fights with Mormons when they came to my door because they were like, they wanted to come in and talk to me about religion. I'm like, I am super happy to talk to you about religion. I'm a Buddhist, and we're going to talk about Buddhism as well as Mormonism. I'm very curious. And they were like, no, yeah, okay, maybe not. Like, as soon as you tell them that you're committed to another religion, they're not interested. But then I was like, but you can leave me your book. Like, don't you want to spread around your books? Haven't you got a lot of books that you want to get rid of?
I have 2 copies of the Book of Mormon at home.
They wouldn't give me one. They wouldn't give me one. And I didn't want to go out and buy one or something from somewhere. I thought, I want one of these 14-year-olds who are called Elder, who come to my door. I want them to give me the book. If I'm going to read the book, I want to get it from them.
I got one from 2 of them. Like, I mean, Mormons have to go on mission for like a year or 2 years, or they don't have to, but it's something a lot of them do.
I think they pretty much have to.
From what I've known people who were Mormons, and I guess it kind of depends. If you're German growing up in a German Mormon congregation, I think the pressure is less extreme than it would be.
American Mormons, as far as I know,
Mormons
like,
in
they
Germany?
all do.
Yeah, of course they are.
There are Mormons
They're everywhere.
just like every religion.
But an American-centered religion. That doesn't make sense.
They are an American-centered religion, but they certainly go everywhere to what do you think they do when they go on mission? But I got one.
Judaism you can call an Israel-centered religion, but they're also everywhere. Buddhism you can call an India-centered religion, but we're also everywhere.
Yeah, and I have 2 copies of the Book of Mormon. One that I got from a friend whose mother was into Mormonism, and they had a couple of them lying around, and I have that one. And then I got one from missionaries, Mormon missionaries in Warsaw, because I visited the Mormon temple in Warsaw for reasons.
Yeah, see, I haven't actually visited their temple. I probably came across as someone who was just making fun of them or something. So
I'm surprised,
but I was genuinely interested.
What?
I'm surprised they didn't like throw you out or try to exercise you or something, Raph.
They were really happy to talk to me, and then I found out that they are definitely part of the Arian heresy.
Oh God,
they are Arianists. I found out through careful questioning, because I know my theology.
Vero says that she has read that Pullman book, by the way. I'm interested because I keep thinking about it every time you're here, and I mean to ask you, if you don't mind, but we've talked about your blindness before.
Yeah.
So I know you don't mind.
No.
I'm really curious what your experience of this is. Like, you're aware of what's going on in the chat. Do you have a thing that is giving you audio of the chat that you're listening to while we're talking?
I have a screen reader software with text to speech, so I can read through that. It does, of course, mean that I have a second voice in my head, like even more voices in my head, which makes it kind of difficult to do that continuously while we're having a conversation. But in theory, I can do that.
Okay, so it's not running continuously. You hit a button and it catches you up on the chat or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to read the Book of Mormon because I'm going to read a lot of Brandon Sanderson this year, and I figured it makes sense to actually know this stuff.
Yeah. I was actually, the reason I was so interested when I had these teenage elders come to my door.
Yeah.
I actually asked them that. I was like, "You got name badges that say elder. Who are you elder then?"
Yeah,
like, how do you get to be called an elder when you're so obviously a beginner at everything? How do you're not an elder anything? This is ridiculous. Anyway, the reason I was interested in having a copy of their book was I was reading a lot of Orson Scott Card back in the day. And I was like, I know enough about this guy as an author that I know there's like his books are just like dripping Mormonism. But
isn't he actually related to Brigham Young or Joseph Smith? One of those?
That I don't know.
Literally related to one of he's Mormon royalty.
Okay, I didn't know that. I actually was really into for a while a series that I've never heard anyone talk about, the Chronicles of Elven Maker.
That's another Orson Scott Card. I have not read any Orson Scott Card for the simple reason that I don't want to give that man money because I know what he's doing with that money.
Yeah, sure. And a lot of that wasn't happening, or at least wasn't known back in the 80s.
Yeah, of course.
I don't even think he's that good of a writer anyways.
I think he's actually a pretty awesome writer. But
I've never heard anything really bad about Ender's Game, though.
Ender's Game,
would love to read it.
The one novel. I haven't read the whole, like, there's, I don't know, 9 or something Ender books. I haven't read all of them, but Ender's Game, Xenocide, and Speaker for the Dead, I thought were very good. I really enjoyed them. The Alvin Maker books were really interesting. I thought that the idea, at least, was really interesting. It's basically colonial America, or slightly post, like the early colonial time, when people are starting to move out west, and all of the sort of folk beliefs are true.
Oh, cool.
That's kind of the world. So there are people that like draw those hexes, those circular things that you still see in Pennsylvania Dutch country and stuff like that. These circular paintings. The hexes, they're called hexes, and they actually have power. They actually do things. You can paint a hex that will make unfriendly people avoid your house, that kind of thing. And the Native American beliefs about the land and shamanism and all of that, those are 100% true, and they work. and that whole world I thought was actually pretty damn cool. Josh is a fan of the Ender books, but only some of them. Josh read all of them not too long ago. I think in 2023, he read all of them.
I mean,
and didn't like some of them, but was a big fan of a lot of them.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to give that guy monies, and I can't just go to a library and borrow his books or get it secondhand. So unless I resort to what we might fancifully call digital buccaneering, I will not get to in this game.
Yeah.
Like, he has some cool ideas, but it's not really like.
Like if you actually actively state that you use some of the money you make through selling books to fund conversion therapy, I will not give you money because I don't want my money to go to that. It's very simple.
Fair enough.
I'm not trying to convince you to do that, Ref.
No, I'm pretty sure that Ender's Game is a good book, and I feel I should read it just so because it's an important part of fantasy and sci-fi history. It's annoying me, but it's
The thing I'm always kind of disappointed about is like everybody's heard of Ender's Game. Nobody's heard of Speaker for the Dead. And the whole point of Ender's Game is that it sets up Speaker for the Dead. Like, Ender's Game is not a book on its own. It exists to set up Xenocide and Speaker for the Dead.
Yeah.
And Speaker for the Dead is a super interesting idea. I loved basically he sets up a religion. It's kind of a religion. It's not really a religion, but like Ender, after being a Xenocide and killing an entire alien race, sets up a kind of religion where there are people who are speakers for the dead, and when someone dies, you can request a speaker for the dead. They come, they research that person as deeply as they can, and then at their funeral, they speak truth about them.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that might be embarrassing.
Yeah, totally. It's very dramatic. And it's really good. I really, really liked the Xenocide was all right. Speaker of the Dead, I thought was just an amazing idea and well executed. It's been years since I read them, but yeah, Ender's Game, the only reason Ender's Game is there is to like create this massive drama and shame that Ender has done, and then it moves on into the other books. And it's always kind of a pity to me that like everybody like seems to talk about Speaker of Ender's Game, but not the other ones. Anyway.
According to Wikipedia, his ancestors include Brigham Young and a bunch of other old Mormon pioneers that I don't know.
Okay.
Hugh B. Brown and two people with the name Card, obviously.
Yeah. Wow.
Sina Young Card Brown and Sina P. Young Card. Well, Cards and Brigham Young. So he is Mormon royalty, basically.
I know so little about the Mormons. I used to drive by one of their big tabernacles quite often near Washington, D.C., but I don't know much about them at all. Yeah, there you go. Thornall also only read Ender's Game.
Yeah. Most of what I know about the Mormons is all the stuff I learned from the Deadlands role-playing game source book on Salt Lake City.
Actually, if you wanna get into role-playing Mormons, Dogs in the Vineyard.
Yeah, I was going to say Dogs in the Vineyard.
Oh my
definitely.
God. Dogs in the Vineyard is such a genius role-playing game. And a very bizarre take on Mormonism that probably doesn't actually teach you very much that's real about Mormonism. And in fact, Vincent Baker, the guy who created the game, really copped quite a lot of stress from his community.
Yeah.
That's why he hasn't republished the game, I think, because
I remember like back in the mid 2000s when the whole like story game revolution was big, and Vincent Baker was like the Lord Savior of of that, because no one wanted to actually talk to what's his name, Ron something. You know what I mean, right? You know what I mean.
I know who you
the
mean.
sorcerer guy.
I mean, I hope to read Under the Banner of Heaven at some point from John Krakauer. I have it over there, but I have it over here, but I haven't Haven't picked it up yet, and no problem, Tharnal. I'm glad you're enjoying Sweet Tooth.
The book you just mentioned, Britton. What is the connection? I didn't get the connection. Is he a Mormon?
Oh no, it's about Mormons. It's about the
okay.
history of Mormons. It's about it's also kind of a true crime story about these two fucking crazy Mormon people who murdered a lady and her kid because they thought they were like contacted by God.
Yeah,
I brought it up because like
the Mormons are a really interesting sort of Christian splinter group in a lot of ways, and I'm definitely going to read more because they have built quite the Mormon genre fiction media machine. Like Orson Scott Card is a Mormon, Brandon Sanderson's a Mormon, Stephanie Meyer is a Mormon. The guy who wrote the God, what's his name? He taught the fiction, the science fiction class before Brandon Sanderson took over at Brigham Young.
Oh, I know.
I want to call it Rune Lords, but I think it's something else with Rune in it. And he's a Mormon. There's a lot of Mormon fantasy and science fiction authors, and didn't
Orson Scott Card originally teach that course? I mean, like many years ago, like in the 80s or something. Could
be, and then it was someone, and then now it's Brandon Sanderson. But the Mormons have used, or there's a lot of like very religious practicing Mormons writing genre fiction for a long time, being very successful at it because they've built these networks, where you can obviously get a bit of a hand up if you're one of them. I assume the Powder Mage guy is also a Mormon, but I haven't checked. I keep forgetting his name because who cares? Brian something. McClellan? Is it McClellan?
I don't remember. I have Powder Mage on my shelf actually. And I don't remember either.
Yeah, I just assume because he's a student of Brandon Sanderson, so I assume he's probably Mormon. But so they have these networks within different parts of the US media industry. And yeah, I think it's important to be aware of those kind of things and look at how that does influence the kind of media we get. Because obviously, if we're fantasy fans,
sure,
we're getting all the fantasy, and we might not be aware who's actually publishing that stuff because
or how much Mormonism is in it.
Yeah, because how much do you actually know about Mormonism beyond just polygamy, which
is that
polygamy and elders who come to my door when I don't want them to?
So is that your like grand conspiracy, Raph, that the Mormons are running the publishing industry?
It's not a grand conspiracy. I don't think they're running the publishing industry. I think they have used media, different parts of the media, especially stuff like genre fiction in a lot of ways. They have found a way and are using that in a way that other religions are not necessarily doing. And that's
Wikipedia apparently has a page for Mormon fiction. Starcade says.
Also, I was just giving you a hard time when I said that. I know not what you were saying.
Bex is also saying there's a lot of Mormon pyramid sales because of the built-in network through the church. Yeah,
they're really big on like multi-level marketing and shit like that as well. It's interesting because
sci-fi writer.
Yeah,
but like how many of you have actually looked into what do Mormons believe that is not just like vaguely Christian? And that's sort of the interesting thing for me. It's like to look at these things. I know that there are parts in the actual Book of Mormon where we now know that Joseph Smith actually did copy stuff from like Penny Dreadfuls at the time. So there's bits and pieces in there about where we now know where he took it from, which
there's I looked into Scientology a fair bit at one point, and L. Ron Hubbard. The interesting thing about L. Ron Hubbard is he actually wrote an essay in the 70s, which was more or less the title. I can't remember it exactly, but it was more or less the title of the essay was How to Get Rich by Founding a Religion. And he described what he then did.
Yeah.
Like, step for step.
Have you Matt, have you read The Circumference of the World?
I have
by Lavi Tidar. You might want to
heard of it. Speaking of Lavi Tidar, I got By Force Alone. It's on my shelf now. You recommended it to me in another pub, and I thought that sounds interesting. It may totally ruin my love of Arthur, but I'm down for it. I'll give it a try at least. Then I realized that it's part of a quartet called the Antimatter of Britain, which cracked me up. I laughed my ass off.
Yeah.
For people who don't know
the second one, which
is
exactly
the Hood. And I love Robin Hood, the Robin Hood stories as well. So I was like, okay, I've got to get the Hood. I don't know what the next couple are, but there's apparently 2 more coming.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know the Matter of Britain is sort of the catch-all name for all of the sort of British mythological-ish, historical-ish stories, like Arthur, Robin Hood, all of that. It's called the Matter of Britain. And Lavi Tidar's breaking it all up, postmodern, deconstructing, whatever series is called the Anti-Matter of Britain, which totally cracked me up.
The Hood is a brilliant book as well. And it has one of those, like, Tidar doing crazy stuff. Like, he takes the Guy of Gisborne part of the Robin Hood stories, and he turns that into a sort of homage to Heart of Darkness. So it's written like Heart of Darkness from the perspective of Guy of Gisborne being, hired by these people. They meet in like this house in France, and they tell him that they have lost contact to their representative up in Nottingham, and then he takes the river up to Nottingham, and the forest gets wilder and wilder as he goes there. And it's
It actually sounds really interesting. I'll have to pick that up.
It's just I love these bits because they're so crazy funny, because they work in, you're like, actually, yeah, I that's a way to tell the Guy of Gisborne story. If you want to tell that story about, someone hunting that other guy, that outlaw guy, you could totally do it that way.
Yeah, sure. Totally.
I did really enjoy that part. Now, so Tidar wrote The Circumference of the World, which is basically about, L. Ron Hubbard, but by a different name. So it's about this sci-fi author that maybe wrote a book that actually helps humanity, and they've formed a church around him, and it's sort of people trying to find that mysterious book, which is sort of like the ominous book Excalibur that L. Ron Hubbard supposedly wrote, that made people suicidal, and because it laid out the entirety of human purpose and whatnot.
What?
And yeah. L. Ron Hubbard supposedly wrote a book called Excalibur, which is a book of philosophy, and he couldn't publish it because everyone who read it committed suicide because it was just so much truth.
That sounds mostly like propaganda to me.
So so we know that he talked about this book while he was writing it and so forth. So there's evidence that, like, it's not something that he made up much later. He talked about it while he was writing it.
But it could be a book he never finished, or it was too bad to be published.
yeah, obviously.
And then you make up a good story about it, and it becomes very mysterious and meaningful.
Yeah, definitely. And Circumference of the World kind of is that, like, people looking for that book of the totally not L. Ron Hubbard, and it then also includes sort of like these bits and pieces of that fiction, of that ominous book that he wrote, Lodestars, which is a short story that Lavi Tidar wrote earlier in his career.
Okay.
And then it has like bits and pieces, a lot of fictional letters of different fantasy and sci-fi authors of the time, Heinlein writing to John W. Campbell and back and forth. And Michael Moorcock, there's a scene set in like a party at Michael Moorcock's apartment in the 60s where everyone is on drugs. And notable fantasy and sci-fi scholar John Clute is hanging out there. And
all right,
it's a very meta thing.
That sounds really meta.
It's really meta, and it's really funny if you have read a bunch of like older science fiction and kind of know who these people are. That it's incredibly funny.
Thornall, the book that Raf was talking about, was written by L. Ron Hubbard, and it was called Excalibur, supposedly.
But what was the book that was about that book?
The Circumference of the World.
Circumference of the World by Lavi Tidar. It's from 2023.
I'm definitely going to try By Force Alone first.
Yeah.
And see if I like Lavi Tidar. I mean, it's my subject. Like, it's Arthur, so I'll be interested. And if it destroys my naive, charming feeling about Arthur, I will get on a train and come kick your ass.
I'm definitely looking forward to your reaction to the book, because I think it does some very interesting things. It also has very little respect for the source material.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I haven't read any actively hostile adaptations or inspired by books, but I've read a few different Arthur versions that were doing something where they were trying to get away from Mallory. So
I think it's not so much hostile to the idea of Arthur, but it's more a deconstruction of how Arthurian mythology and Arthurian legends, especially since like the 19th century, are used to create sort of to justify patriotisms, forms of patriotism and imperialism and so forth. It sort of like the impetus behind it is like, let's take this thing down once and for all and show how ridiculous some of it is. And you can still love it, but don't turn it into something that explains why you should now invade different countries.
Yeah, and don't make it the basis of your racism. Like,
exactly.
Just be an honest racist and admit that you're an asshole, and it doesn't have anything to do with Arthur. It's not his fault that you're an asshole. Liam just finished By Force Alone yesterday. What'd you think, Liam? I'm really interested. The way things are looking, and I'm in a phase where I'm trying really hard not to commit or plan my reading. I'm trying not to commit to reading anything with anyone else, and I'm trying not to plan too far ahead. But mood reading also means I still have 10 or 20 books where I'm like, I'm in the mood to read all of these right now, and I can't read all of them right now, so I'm probably going to read all of them in the next 2 months. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've never had a TBR really. I have like sort of like rough outlines of what I want to get into, like Brandon Sanderson this year. But usually how I go about my reading is like I have stuff in my brain that is sort of floating around. When I finish a book, I'm like, the first thing that comes to mind of the books that I always wanted to read in that situation is the next book I'm going to read. And if someone says something on a Discord or whatever right when I'm finishing a book, then I'm going to read that book next because that's just like what's currently catching my attention, and then I'm going to wherever afterwards.
It often seems, I mean, like you've got a background in philosophy that I definitely don't have, and it often seems to me like a lot of, when you talk about reading or what you've been reading lately, it always sounds a bit to me like a project. Like you've got a philosophical thing going on in your head, and you're reading things that suit that as some sort of a project to get a certain amount finished or to get to a certain point or whatever. Which is totally not the way I read. Daniel says Nazis are trying to make Tolkien the basis of their racism as well. Exactly. People will justify their douchebaggery through
I do love Tolkien's response to the Nazis when they tried to like take his book and they tried to publish it in Germany.
They didn't try to publish it in Germany. He was trying to publish it in Germany,
and they asked him if he was Jewish.
And they asked him in a really roundabout, sort of indirect way if he was Jewish, and he basically told them he'd be honored if he had been Jewish, but no, he wasn't. But they could get fucked.
There's a really funny thing. Once again with Lavi Tidar, he wrote a book called A Man Lies Dreaming, which I do recommend, but it is a very, very, very dark book in a lot of ways. And it's basically a first-person noir, like hard-boiled detective story told by one private detective in London called Wolf, who may have been a chancellor of Germany before a coup attempt made him flee the country in like 1934, and now he's working as a private detective in London while the British fascists under Mosley are slowly taking control. And it's really, that's the harmless part, trust me.
It
has a scene where he has to go to where he goes to like a publishing like function and meets this guy Tolkien, who's just published a book about hobbits, and it's our first person narrator Wolf is not very happy with Tolkien and makes all these disparaging comments about Tolkien. It's just so funny to have like a Jewish author writing a first person version of Adolf Hitler getting pissed off by Tolkien at an author's function in 1940.
Dornall is saying that the sword was stuck in an anvil. I don't know what you mean by the original. I mean, like, what is the original Arthur story? The in Mallory, it was stuck in an anvil into a stone. The anvil was on a stone, and the sword was stuck through both of them, if I remember correctly. I think it may have been an anvil in Monmouth. Okay, yeah.
from what I remember. But it kind of switches between anvils and rocks and whatnot.
It's
But
like it in every version. There are anvils or rocks or both, and the sword that is stuck in there is sometimes Excalibur,
sometimes it's a different book.
I forget what the other sword's called, but the Sword of Kings is not actually Excalibur.
No, Excalibur is the one he gets later
versions.
from
Exactly.
like a deal from the Lady of the Lake.
Exactly, the Lady of the Lake gives him Excalibur, and the mainly the really cool thing about Excalibur is the scabbard, because if you're wearing the scabbard, you cannot bleed.
Which is why Morgane Le Fay has someone steal the scabbard and give it to her guy, who then tries to kill Arthur in a fight where Thomas Mallory describes Arthur as a manly man, which I just can't get over.
The 15th century was a different time.
I just love the way that we make that's the first time I ever read the phrase "a manly man" in something that is considered literature, and I guess it makes sense, but it's still funny.
Yeah, the Lady of the Lake, not the Lady of the Stone. The Lady of the Lake gives Arthur Excalibur, and the sword that was in the anvil, I don't think ever uses it except to the knights who watch the sword in the anvil. Yeah.
I mean, that's the one he tries to bring to his brother Kay, foster brother Sir Kay, right? That's the one. Yeah,
exactly.
When he's like, "Oh shit, I need a sword," because Kay broke his sword or lost his sword, forgot his sword in the pavilion. Then he sends Arthur, and he just picks up that sword by accident. And then Kay goes like, "No, I totally took that sword of King's." And everyone's like,
Kay's a bit of a douche.
It's really interesting.
Kay is a bit of a dick, and Kay is like throughout the entire book. Arthur's brother Sir Kay is a bit of a dick to everybody.
That's one of those really fascinating things, because even when you read the Mabinogion, right, which is a different tradition, the Welsh tradition, there's the what's the story called? The story of something. It's a marriage story where this boy wants to marry that girl, and I can't pronounce Welsh names, so I won't even try. But he goes because he's connected to Arthur, so he goes to Arthur's court. And even there, he has to talk to Sir Kay first. And Sir Kay is once again a dick. Even in the Welsh tradition, Sir Kay is always the asshole.
Yeah.
Being mean to everyone, giving...
I mean, he's a foil for Arthur. Like, he's clearly a foil for Arthur. Arthur is good, and Kay is showing you what not good is. He's not evil or anything, but
he's just a bit of a dick.
He's a bit of a dick, and he's impolite, especially to people who are weaker than him. And that's the whole thing that the Arthur, like Camelot and chivalry and all of that, is building up to, is being nice to people who are weaker than you.
Yeah, but that's sort of what I find so interesting about Kay in the Mabinogion, because Arthur is not necessarily your very Christian King Arthur in that version, and even there, Kay, which kind of makes me wonder if Sir Kay has been sort of like a trickster kind of figure in other legends and just got folded into the Arthurian cycle. Through that. That's something I've been wondering about, because he does stick out as well. A bit of a dick.
He's basically the only person who is not very nice in the court. Like Gawain does some really stupid things, but it's because he can't keep control of himself. He's a hothead. Yeah, and he kills a lady, but it's an accident, and there's lots of things like that with Sir Gawain. But
he usually feels really sorry for what he does. Gawain
exactly. I mean, like, all of his mistakes motivate him to be a better knight. I'm actually right now working on a campaign for Pendragon, which for everybody who doesn't know is an RPG role-playing game where you play Arthurian knights. And the opening scene that everyone's going to play is they're all going to coincidentally meet at the Sword and the Stone during the tournament, and Arthur is going to run up while they're there and pull the sword out and run off. And that's sort of how the adventure is going to begin, because he's getting a sword for his brother Kay for the tournament. And they are going to end up being knights that guard the stone, the sword and the stone, while Arthur is getting almost coronated.
That's a really cool setup. I think what's so interesting for me about Kay, though, is that compared to other knights, Kay does very, very little fighting. Like he's his seneschal. He kind of runs the court and everything. So he has this sort of like gatekeeper version. Like when anyone who wants to see Arthur has to go past Kay, and Kay's going to be mean to them for some reason, give them like a stupid nickname or something, and call them like Beaumain or whatever.
Yeah,
to fuck with them.
He gives everyone who turns up in the court and is interesting, he gives them an insulting nickname. Yeah,
and that's why I think he might have been like a different mythical or legendary character that got folded, because that's a very very specific trait that kind of falls outside what other knights are described like or whatever. He kind of feels out of place sometimes in especially in Mallory. I think
he totally feels out of place in Mallory because everybody else is. I mean, Agravain and some of them are actually also like they're even like Agravain is much more.
Agravain is an asshole.
Yeah, he's a complete ass.
He might be more evil than Mordred actually when you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things wouldn't have been possible without Agravain. Like a lot of bad things wouldn't have been possible without Agravain being a complete asshole.
Yeah,
but,
I'm more of a Norse guy, so I'm kind of going over my head.
Yeah, and I think we probably nerded out about Mallory long enough. I mean, Raph and I obviously have a lot to talk about in the Arthur mythology, but we may be the only ones around.
I don't know. There's something about the Norse idea of fate that I find quite fascinating.
Speaking of things that have been wholesale taken over by Nazis.
Norse mythology?
Oh my God! Yes,
man, that's been going on for a long time now.
Yes,
Nazi,
like the original Nazis were quite into it. No, I'm not accusing you of being a Nazi.
Well,
obviously,
that's good.
But
yeah.
I'm also totally into Norse mythology. I've got the prose Edda and the poetic Edda and everything on my shelf. You know, I'm totally into Norse mythology, but sometimes I'm a little embarrassed almost by it because every time you see a Nazi, they're wearing runes and hammers and all that sort of stuff. I mean, modern Nazis anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Greek, bunch of fucking prima donnas. Those Greek gods.
You have probably never read actual Greek mythology.
I was going to say.
I mean, I
they
think
were
it's
pretty hardcore badasses.
Raph, let me just tell you right now.
Yeah.
Zeus turns into a swan and fucks a lady. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
have you ever had to actually fight an actual swan or ever encountered an actual swan?
Swans are pretty damn badass.
You don't want to fight swans.
Yeah, swans are pretty fucking scary.
No.
But
yeah, swans are like nightmare fuel. They're fucked up.
I used to do a lot of rowing, and you encounter swans when you're on a rowboat. When you're like in one of those like one person rowboats, not kayaks or canoes, but like actual rowboats, they are very easy to topple. And you encounter swans, they're scary because suddenly you're like on the water level, and you realize how fucking huge those.
They're bigger
are.
than you when you're sitting in a boat
across the nation. I'm just saying, like they're all fucking assholes. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But that's another thing that's interesting, right? You're talking about that story about Zeus turning into something. So much of what we consider Greek mythology, so much of that stuff is, in fact, comes from the Metamorphoses, which was written by a horny Roman dude who was pissed off because he got sent away because of, cuckolding important people. And then he got sent to the Black Sea and got really pissed off by everyone and wrote long and sad letters and wanted to come back to Rome. It's not, Greek mythology in a way that, Greeks would have probably told it to anyone, 500 years earlier.
Ron Payne just joined the chat, and his first comment, other than waving, was an emoji, 2 emojis, dagger, swan. Yes,
dude, even
I agree with you, Ron. Like, I understand what you're talking about. Like I've been at ponds. I remember when I was a kid, actually, one of the rituals of my childhood was my mother didn't want to go to church, and my grandmother, her mother, was super religious, Southern Baptist, church every Sunday.
Oof.
And my mother's deal with her mother was to sacrifice me. So I got given to my grandparents every Saturday night, which as a kid, I thought this was great. So I went to my grandparents, had dinner, spent the night at their place. Sunday morning, my grandmother got to take me to Bible school, where when I was 6 years old, I got thrown out because I was arguing with them and they thought it was inconvenient. And then we had to go to church. And then after church, my grandfather refused to go to church. And after church, he would drive me to the cemetery where his mother was buried, and we would feed the ducks. There was a big pond or small lake in the cemetery, and we would go to the cemetery and feed the ducks. And occasionally swans would show up.
Oh, hell.
And attack us. They're just like so aggro. They're not even scary because they're big. They're just aggro, and they would come at you and try and bite you and scream and make these horrible noises. And oh my god,
same thing with geese. They're fucking mean, dude.
All right, I'll be back in a second, but I have to go and do the self-serve thing at this pub.
Ovid was writing Greek mythology fanfic. Yes,
that is not untrue.
I do. I mean, it's not. I don't hate all Greek myth. I like the like the labyrinth story is fun. But I don't know. There's something about, I guess it's just like the latent masculinity in me, Matt, that is attracted to Norse because, there's a bunch of gods. And
you're just uncomfortable that the Greeks were all naked.
No.
And that they were very fluid about their sexual preferences.
I mean, no. But I don't really care about that. But, if they want to bang, they go. I don't know.
Geese are also pretty scary. They're basically like low rent swans.
Yeah, they're fucking mean. Like you walk up to one, they start hissing at you. Like,
and they have serrated beaks, as Derry pointed out. Yeah. Good question, Ron. How many people in the cemetery were put there by swans? Maybe my great grandmother was actually murdered by a swan. My granddad never told me that. Maybe that's a secret of our family. Swans are the Sir Kay of waterfowl. Yes. Well, Sir Kay wasn't violent. He was actually a bit of a pussy as far as that stuff goes. He never really got in fights much.
Oh my god.
There were tournaments that he never really won anything, and not as aggressive as a turkey. I have no real direct experience with turkeys other than eating them, which I try to avoid because turkey meat is horrible.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of turkey.
Yeah. Romans were also sexually quite fluid. Yeah.
Yeah, apparently being gay was fine, but being a bottom, that's a no-go. That means you're not manly.
Well, you got slaves. You got slaves for that. Kay is more violent in earlier stuff. Okay. Yeah, I mean, in Mallory, Kay, he does get in fights. He enters tournaments and stuff, and he does okay, but he never wins. He's not.
He never goes on quests
of any sort. He
rarely goes on quests.
No, but he's the seneschal. I mean, he has to stay in court.
Yeah, which
geese are bad, but swans are worse. I don't know who is worse. You vote in the comments. Which is worse, geese or swans?
I've not encountered swans yet, so I'd say geese.
So if you're a German or a Gaul trying to invade Rome, I would definitely vote for geese.
Okay, explain.
Oh, you don't know that story?
I don't think
it's one of those very specific Roman legends that when the Gauls tried to invade Rome and they tried to climb up to the Capitol Hill, and the geese actually started making a fuss, which is why the Romans found out that people were sneaking up on their hill, and then they defeated the Gauls. So the geese are sort of holy, or were holy in parts of Roman history because they saved the city by being noisy.
Okay. Yeah, Daniel, you show those geese who's boss, and those swans. Not scared of large waterfowl. Fair enough. We can't let the large waterfowl cow us.
I like Liam's answer a lot.
Yeah, geese have the numbers to win by force alone.
Okay. I love how Liam, since he's read that book, uses the terms "by force alone" in way too many sentences.
Oh my god.
Liam is asking you, Ralph, if this is Brennus's sacking of Rome.
I think it is Brennus's, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's been a while since I last read it, but I think it's Brennus's, yes. It's
Okay.
it's still like, very early Roman history, pre Republic, I think, even, or it might be early Republic and just after they kicked out the Tarquins, but I'm not quite sure.
Everyone is voting for geese. Everyone that's voted has voted for geese. So geese seem to take the cake over.
Okay, I'll just tell you
swans.
one story, and that is that when I was younger, in the city that I lived back then, the largest battleship board in all of Germany, there a swan flew over a bridge and just flew into a pedestrian, and that was deadly because the person died because a swan crashed into their head.
Wow. Okay. That's
my dad.
that's serious.
My dad hates geese. We'll go golfing and he'll just shoot golf balls at them. Doesn't give a shit.
Fair enough.
I have not read The Birds by Du Maurier, but I have watched the movie.
I always thought it was kind of goofy, but maybe it's just because I'm a yokel 21st century kid.
The movie is goofy, but I think at the time it came out, it was not at all goofy. I imagine people were not watching it at the time. I also, I've seen it many times, and I also kind of laugh at it because a lot of it is actually pretty goofy.
I watched it. I watched it in a theater actually, and it does have, especially when you know how much of a dick Hitchcock was to his lead actress in that movie. Her emotions in the situation when she's attacked by birds are incredibly scary to watch because she was actually fucking frightened because Hitchcock thought it was a good idea to take actual living birds and throw them at her.
Kind of torturing her, yeah.
I'd say Vertigo and Rear Window are my favorite films from Hitchcock.
Rope
Rope
is amazing. Rope is really cool because it's not actually, but is made to look like it is shot in one take. And a lot of it is shot in very few takes. It was the lowest number of takes in any film up to that point. It's 6 takes, and there are a couple of bits where the cut is kind of hidden, like someone walks right in front of the camera and it goes black because someone walked in front of the camera, and that's where the cut is. But the whole thing takes place in one flat. Most of it is in one room. And I think there's only 4 actors or maybe 5. And it feels like a stage play in a way. Yeah. And it builds up a crazy amount of tension. I mean, the really high level idea of it is it's dark academia. There are some students. They strangle their professor and I think they're studying criminology, and they kill their criminology professor just to see if they can get away with it, or to prove that they can get away with it. And their professor is in the room, and he's in a box which they're using as a table when they're having a dinner party. And they give somebody a package which is tied up in the rope that they strangled the guy with. And they're just daring someone to figure it out, and it's really, really cool. 12 Angry Men is the one about the jury, and it's a really good movie.
Yeah, one of my favorites of all time. Love that film.
Yeah, 12 Angry Men is a stunningly good movie. It's very, very cool. Also, a one-room movie, basically. Yeah, but Rope is I think everybody talks about.
No Vertigo love. I was very disappointed.
Vertigo, I don't find that interesting. Not nearly as interesting as Rope, because Rope is so simple. I love that there's almost nothing going on, and yet it builds up this tension throughout the whole movie. It's pretty crazy. It's very, very good. Listen, guys, it is where I am and where Raf is almost 11.
That's true.
So I think I'm going to call it for the evening.
All right.
I originally had kind of planned on doing sprints, and
That did not happen.
That did not
it
happen.
didn't pan out
Yeah,
there.
it's hard when the conversation starts flowing well, and a lot of people join. Like there were 5 or 6 people here at the beginning. I'm always very hesitant to say, okay, now let's not talk.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. Is the problem? Yeah.
Clearly, you are having too much fun,
Exactly,
Mr. On Books.
Yeah.
I just assume that is your real name.
Oh, that's right. Vero corrected me. It's a fellow student that they kill. It's not the professor. Their professor is James Stewart, who is there for the dinner party. They're inviting, they're doing everything to sort of provoke something and still get away with it. So they invite their professor, and he figures it out, of course. Spoilers. But yeah, awesome movie. I love Rope. Very, very cool. I haven't seen that many. I've seen North by Northwest, which is also pretty cool. And Double Indemnity and Birds and
Wait, I don't think Hitchcock made Double
many others.
Indemnity. Did he?
Did he?
I'm not sure.
Pretty sure he did. I may be wrong. I am often, but
So what are you going to be reading soon, Matt? Do you have any ones you want to get to?
what I am doing right now is it was directed by Billy Wilder. It's not Double Indemnity that I'm thinking of. I'm just looking it up. It's let me look up Hitchcock films. I am reading The Spear Cuts Through Water.
Well, yeah, I know.
And
anything else aside from that?
I am definitely after that committed to reading The Two Towers, because I am doing a Lord of the Rings reread with vlogs. And after that, I'm not committing to anything, but I am really, really tempted to start reading Sun Eater as soon as possible.
You've fallen for the hype train.
No, I have not fallen for the hype
Everyone
train.
is reading it.
I've had Sun Eater on my list for a year and a half because I watch Mike. I don't watch Daniel Green. And I don't often watch Patrick Leo. I've just constantly been thinking Sun Eater sounds like it's totally up my alley. Like Chris Rocchio is a huge Gene Wolfe fan. I am a huge Gene Wolfe fan. Chris Rocchio is a huge Frank Herbert fan. I'm a huge Frank Herbert fan. I'm like, it just sounds like a book I should be reading. Yeah. And has for a long time.
Yeah.
So
You might not be the only one thinking that.
yeah, well now it's like everyone's reading it and everyone thinks it's super uncool because everyone's reading it, and I don't have that problem. I'm happy to read books other people are reading as long as they're good.
Yeah. That's because you're a well-balanced human being, unlike me, where I'm like, the more popular a book gets, the less I want to read it.
I don't care if other people are reading it. All that means to me is it's probably good. And why would I not want to read it?
That's where we differ. That's where we differ, because I don't care whether a book is popular per se. But I'm always wary of books when even people that usually don't read a lot suddenly tell me that I have to read this one book because it's so awesome. I'm like, what? You have read like 5 books in the last 10 years. I don't trust your take on what a good book is because you don't know. Obviously, Rocchio is different because obviously also people that read a lot and like a lot of stuff and know stuff about books, like for a Sun Eater, but it has that feel where suddenly people where I have problems.
I'm not talking about those people though. I'm talking about our friends, right? Like they don't read 5 books in a year. They read 10 books in a month, and they talk about books and think about books all the time. Yeah. And those people are loving Sun Eater. So I'm like, I will be extremely surprised if I think it's a bad book. I can't imagine that it is a bad book.
I think for
And-
me, I'm just like right now, I'm scared that it does not live up to the hype, because if you compare something to, say, Gene Wolfe, I have very specific expectations, and I am not sure if someone like Christopher Rocchio can actually meet those. Chances are he can't, and that's not on him. It's just like that. I have like very specific expectations that don't work. Remember when
I am not expecting Chris Rocchio to be Gene Wolfe. Like, very few people are Gene Wolfe since Gene Wolfe died.
I mean,
there was one, but I don't know anybody else who is Gene Wolfe. And I don't expect Chris Rocchio to be Gene Wolfe. I don't expect him
Gene
to be
Wolfe
Frank
created
Herbert.
the Pringle.
No, he didn't.
And also wrote great novels.
He did
apparently.
not
worked
create
on,
the
he
Pringle.
worked on the machine, but he had some
was an
patents.
engineer working on the machine, and he was
Hey,
also not
hey,
the
hey,
inspiration for the Pringles man.
Shush, let me have my moment.
He just has the same mustache.
He has a
Also,
similar
he
mustache.
he did have an epic mustache.
Nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
But
what's interesting,
I
though,
don't
is like
expect Chris Rocchio to be Gene Wolfe.
Yeah.
Like expecting anyone to be Gene Wolfe is unfair.
Yeah.
I expect Chris Rocchio to write a good science fantasy story.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've heard he's done. And I look forward to reading it. And I will probably start it next month-ish.
I'm gonna read Sun Eater when
I'm
it's
constantly like, every time I read a book now, even though I'm reading a not very thick book at the moment, I will probably still stick an Amber book in between.
They're always so much fun.
Yeah,
Exactly. And they're like
Landon
120
there.
pages. Super easy to read.
Which one's your favorite of the 10?
I think, I mean, it's been a long time since I read them. I've read them probably 3 or 4 times, but I have a garbage memory. And I think the last time I read them was probably 10 or more years ago. But I have very good memories of Guns of Avalon.
It has the best title.
Yeah. Well, Guns of Avalon is an awesome title. No
Yeah.
question. But I remember that one being pretty good.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is purely world building mechanics, but I am super into the idea of the trumps. For people who don't know, the trumps are cards,
basically playing cards that act as mobile phones,
more or less. Like, you have a card which is painted of a person, and when you are a magic person and you concentrate on that card, you can establish like a psychic link to that person, and you can step through to where that person is.
Yeah.
And I love the bits in the novels where Dworkin shows up, and you start getting a lot more detail on like what the trumps are and how exactly they work. And then in the second series, I find it kind of fascinating with what Merlin is doing with the trumps.
True.
So yeah, but Guns of Avalon is is probably my favorite, but we'll see.
I just also appreciate Corwin more than Merlin as a narrator. Like, his voice.
Yes.
Corwin's voice and style is just really cool.
Corwin is more of a badass. Merlin is more of a modern man who is a bit of a hippie kind of. So he's kind of a wimp in a way compared to Corwin.
Speaking of Gene Wolfe, I got The Wizard Knight here. I might read it with Liam and
I love
T
that one.
soon.
I couldn't get into that back when I tried it like 20 years ago.
So, you know,
I really enjoyed it. Also, it has a really cool talking dog and a really cool talking cat, and they're having fights constantly.
But yeah, I'm hoping to read this with Liam and T from an Erudite Adventure, because I'm kind of terrified of reading this by myself. So
it's really cool.
Right. Bex is reading a book she's not sure she likes yet. What is it, Bex? Tell us. Name and shame.
I'm going to read my first 2024 release this week.
2024 release. Actually, I just read a 2024 release and I DNF'd it. Oh my God. I was so looking forward to it. In the Shadow of Their Dying. I got an arc. It's a novella. It's not very long, 200 something pages, written by Anna Smith Spark and Michael R. Fletcher together.
Oh, okay.
And oh my God. I was super pissed off by this book. It felt it the basic idea was really cool. The basic idea is there is a city which is under siege. The people inside the city, there is a demon loose in the city. There is an assassin trying to kill the king in the city. There are some mercenaries who, there are interesting characters, and it's an interesting sort of basic setup. And it felt like a 5-year-old who had learned a lot of bad words and was trying to piss off their parents by saying them as much as possible. Oh my God. How often can you say piss, shit, dog meat, weak ale? It was just, it felt like a grimdark parody of grimdarkness. It was just
dog meat's a curse.
It's not a curse, but it was just repeated a million times. It just felt like it really felt like a parody of Grimdark, although it's meant to be a Grimdark novel. It was just so over the top.
Okay, Bex is reading Otessa Mushfaq. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I have Lapvona here, and I actually want to try Eileen possibly this year, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's definitely a very dark and twisted thing.
Sounds like something that people who label themselves as Grimdark authors would write. Well, guess what Anima Smith Sparks' name on Twitter is?
Lady Grimdark?
Queen Grimdark.
That's good, because Joe Abercrombie's is Lord Grimdark.
Yeah, but he was joking.
No. I was around when that whole thing started.
I'm not sure she's joking. I actually got her, I forget what the Empire of Ashes or whatever it's called, the Quarter Broken Knives and the other two books, the trilogy. It was on sale at the Broken Binding for the price of one paperback, basically, so I bought it. And now that I've read this novella, which I DNF'd like 20 pages from the end, I was just like, no, fuck this. I don't know about the trilogy. Lady Grimdark is his wife. Is Jabbercrombie's wife.
Okay.
I don't know. I've heard Ron is saying they split writing duties. So I don't know exactly who wrote what, but the one bit I do know is there's a demon in the book, and we get the demon's POV. And the demon's POV was the only bit that I consistently liked. And I know that Anna Smith Spark wrote the demon POV. The other bits, I don't know if she only wrote the demon POV or if she split other things with Fletcher. But oh my goodness. And there was some really weird humor that turns up like in the last 10% of the book. I was like, this doesn't fit anywhere else in the book. There is no humor, anything like this anywhere else in the book. And suddenly towards the end, it's like,
it's interesting we're talking about Grimdark now, because I'm actually hoping to have a conversation with my friend Pam from Epic Tales, talking about like what Grimdark actually means, because it's something I've considered for a while.
You want me to spoil it all by telling you where it all comes from?
I mean,
Warhammer 40K.
Yes and no. It starts with Warhammer 40K, where the whole it's a grim and dark future comes from. Yeah. And what happened then is that some very Christian conservative authors labeled new the gritty fantasy that came out in the early 2000s, called it Grimdark. And then Joe Abercrombie leaned into it and called himself Lord Grimdark. So it was a term used by a very specific group of writers and readers and critics to label that more graphic, violent fantasy, and they use it as an insult. And then certain people took that insult and made it their own. That's kind of where it all comes from. There's an interesting blog post that Abercrombie wrote. It's called "The Value of Grit," and it's 2008-ish, I think, where he links some of these reviews that talk about certain books. There's a really interesting one by from the Nerds of a Feather blog about Prince of Nothing, and there's a different other one talking about that whole conversation, where that came from. And that's sort of where the idea of grimdark as a genre comes from. It's an insult that a group of writers, then all getting published at the same time, sort of made their own in an ironic way, which is, there's a lot of humor with,
there are a lot of, I like Abercrombie's books. Yeah, I've enjoyed Abercrombie's books. So I'm not someone who is against grimdark or who can't deal with swearing or anything like that. But this felt like someone had run through a fantasy world and stuck up a whole bunch of stickers that said piss, shit, ass, mud, blood, whatever. And it just felt so surface. Like, it doesn't touch me if you use a word over and over again. It does touch me if you show people suffering, or if you show people making extremely poor moral decisions, or that kind of stuff. I find interesting. I find moving. I find engaging. But just describing the world being ugly over and over again and expecting that that's enough, just like, I was like, this feels like a 10-year-old's understanding what grimdark is. I just, it just wasn't good.
Definitely. I'm still looking forward to reading Michael R. Fletcher at some point. I'm scared. I'm kind of wary. I like the idea behind his Manifest Delusions trilogy. I think the idea of
the first one last year was really good.
I
keep hearing Beyond Redemption, all sorts of people say it's great. Now I'm hesitant because I read this novella and I'm like, I think the parts that he wrote were the parts I hated. So
yeah, I'm scared because he calls his Twitter handle is a Flesh God Apocalypse reference, and he's very open about being a metalhead, and I think he's very much the kind of metal fan that I really don't like. It's very much about in your face blood and gore and being evil and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if there's a level of self-awareness or self-irony that could make this good. I haven't seen that from him in his public appearances, so I'm
going by the novella.
Yeah,
a juvenile in your face blood and gore thing. Yes, totally seems up his alley. And is there an ironic self-awareness to it? No, doesn't seem to me like there is.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm afraid of. I'll still try it, see what happens, but
we'll see. I mean, this is just a novella. It was written by two people. But I'm almost certain that the parts I really didn't like were written by him.
I liked Beyond Redemption though.
A lot of people have said they liked it a lot, and I'm interested to see, because this felt very juvenile, like juvenile and poor writing, honestly. Which as far as I can say that from my extremely unqualified understanding of writing, but I don't know. Anyway. I was trying to cut this off because it is now past 11.
Yeah.
It has been a pleasure, guys. Thanks for sticking with for the whole time, or most of the time. Raph came a bit later. Britton was here since the beginning. It was a great pleasure to see everybody in the chat again. I love Sunday Pub. I will be doing Sunday Pub next weekend for sure. If you haven't heard, just a little tease. Joanna and I are leaving the Grimoire Discord. We are leaving it on the best of terms. The guys in the Grimoire Discord and us are still friends. We are totally doing this without any kind of drama, and there is no cause that is dramatic. We just want to do our own thing, and we are starting a new Discord with Josh from Red Fury Books. We'll be officially announcing it and opening the Discord and putting out links and everything everywhere next weekend.
Okay.
So look forward to that, and I look forward to seeing you, or at least some of you, in Sunday Pub next week. Thanks, everybody.
See you around.
Yeah.